Welcome back to Root Feelings, a podcast dedicated to learning and growing from our lived experiences. On this week's episode, we want to dedicate this episode to just kind of going over the elections and debriefing our feelings about it. I feel like it's a heavy moment for some of us. So it's important just to kind of discuss this and figure out how we're going to move forward. And Carmen is going to take over and just kind of have a discussion about how to, I guess, bring up our morale. And yeah, guide us a little bit. This is her forte, so we're going to hand it over.
I wouldn't say this my strong suit, I guess. Maybe. I think I practice hope regularly, and it's something that through my work in climate advocacy and the environmental crisis, like I have to actively practice hope. Otherwise, there's a lot of reasons to feel unmotivated, to be apathetic to what's happening around us. So I share similar sentiments of concern, of uncertainty, of a lot of uncertainty, especially in the state that we're in. It reminded me of, what happened in 2020. That will never leave my mind about arriving here. I had a few months and people were just parading down the main street with their trucks and guns and flags, making it known that they have guns. Because power,
That's what they were trying to do.
Yeah, intimidation is the right word. So I think about that, and that's where that fear and that uncertainty is coming from, of like there's a shift towards more bold reactions from our society on both spectrums. We're here talking about it because we feel bold too. We feel bold enough to talk about these things and to dedicate time to envision new possibilities. That is a privileged position to be in, to be able to imagine and not be actively under threat, right?
Right.
So practicing hope is something for me that I just have to live by. Otherwise, I have plenty of reasons to not keep going.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So in talking about this, Michelle and I yesterday, we were having a difficult conversation.
We were.
About how to even approach this, and recognizing myself, I'll say, I needed to understand where you were coming from.
Right.
And how this affects you personally, how it's affecting your morale, as you're saying. And for me also to recognize that, like, and acknowledge that I don't have all the solutions, that I can imagine and ideate, but it also takes some action, right? Like it takes some, I've been using the word responsibility, of like it takes responsibility, and I have to take responsibility in what's happening, not for the whole world, because that's a big thing, but responsibility for how I show up in my community.
For us,
and
absolutely.
So that's where I'm coming from. Like, I'm not an expert, I don't know what we're gonna do, but I feel like it is necessary to acknowledge that there needs to be a shift in ourselves, within ourselves, to learn how to show up and take responsibility for ourselves. And I say that as a message for me, like to me, that I need to take more ownership of kind of how I do show up and how informed I am and how active I am in my community.
Yeah, last night when we were having that difficult conversation, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to discuss it. Not because it's not important to do it, because it definitely needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be opened up and dissected. I don't know. I was like just at a loss, just dumbfounded. I went into this moment of shock, like, and I just couldn't process it completely. I had school, I had other things to do, and I couldn't allow myself to just stop and kind of digest what had happened. And but as I didn't sleep because of it, but like I realized that it's very important to talk about, and maybe this will just getting it off our chest and stuff, and just allowing it just to be, and how you had mentioned, like, radically accept it, like, will help me move forward, and I don't know, continue being the person that I am, because that it doesn't change anything, it doesn't change who we are, it doesn't change our morals, it doesn't change what we believe on, it doesn't change our beliefs, and the outcomes. So let's talk about it.
I think it is a moment to, as that other book that I was sharing, it's a book by Naomi Klein. It's called No Is Not Enough, and this actually came out when Trump was elected and everything that came out of that, but she talks about it in the form of, like, it's a moment to leap, to take a leap, to believe in ourselves, and to be more, like, radical, to really believe that we can change things around us, because we do. Like, every day we have an impact on the people around us. I think I want to learn how to use that to help people, to help our society, instead of, trying to disengage. Because I think that's one of my biggest problems too, like, is disengaging with what's happening around us. It's giving and somehow trusting complete strangers to make decisions on my behalf. And when I think about that, I'm like, wait, like, that doesn't sit right with me. Like, I also have a form of power and influence in my community, and I think that if you're gonna be someone that holds power, you have to be of service to your community. You have to be here, and this all comes from my background, I think, in student organizing, where one of the people that I consider, like, someone that mentored me a little bit, her name is Tiffany Dina Lofton. She's like a national organizer, union organizer, student organizer. This statement of, our time here is limited, and we have a responsibility to leave it better. We all have limited time, but we all have a responsibility to leave it better for the next generation.
Exactly.
And so all of that is, like, where I'm coming from. That I'll give you a second. That inspiration, that fire comes from those words of, like, I have a responsibility to leave the world a better place. And so how I show up in my community does matter, because, again, even when you walk and you say hi to your neighborhood, say hi to a neighbor, that's you making a positive impact of, like, oh, this lady, who stopped me the other day, she felt so happy because I gave her, like, 2-3 minutes of my time, just talking to her about how cute my dogs were. But I'm sure that she was so happy, and I felt good too, of like, oh, like that's a neighbor, blah blah blah. But those connections, that sense of like we're not alone, is really important in building these movements. Because, and I think it's important, I don't know if you want to share all the details of, you know, the differences between you and your family politically, but I think that that's why it was so hard to sit with that reality, because you feel like you're at home and nobody has your back, you know?
Yeah.
But there is more outside of your immediate family, like, that are on your side, that understand, that share similar values to you.
But isn't that like, I mean, yeah, I definitely feel that, and I have felt that for a few years now, not even for this, I mean, as soon as president got the first election, you know, ever since then, it's definitely felt like I'm the black sheep of the family. I'm the anomaly, you know. And it is difficult. It's difficult because I don't feel like they have my back, and they tell me, like, don't take it personally, you know, it's not you, but it's like, you it kind of is personal, though, because you're voting against my rights, you know. And right now, when you said, like, you don't feel safe in your own home, literally, I don't feel like they have my back in my own home, but the United States is my home, and I still don't feel like they have my back.
Yeah.
Like, how is it that me as a woman, I'm less valuable? You know, I don't feel valued. I don't feel like I'm important to this country based on the results. I don't know. It's just, it's difficult. It's difficult to see it that way. And I feel like a lot of people are choosing money over human rights. And that's tough for me to digest and to accept.
Yeah.
Because I would think that human rights are more important than money.
For sure.
Like, it's money, you know?
Yeah. Yes, and if I think in historically and systems. So when I think about, again, I was saying with your parents, I don't want to say who, but your parents, if they came from a background where they didn't have anything, where they were dirt poor, you know, didn't know if they were going to have a meal the next day, type of shit. When you're sold this idea that you can live well off, that money is going to buy everything, then your value is money.
Right, yeah.
You are not valuable.
That makes sense.
You as a person are not valuable unless you make money. And that's something that through generations, I mean, my grandmother said this recently because I haven't found a job, my brother hasn't found a job, but he's been struggling a little bit more than I have. And she said something to the nature of like, oh, sin trabajo no vales nada. You know, and I understand. I think that we all have to offer something. Like, we are all here to offer something to our society. But I don't think that if you are not working, you are not valuable.
Yeah.
I think that you're valuable regardless of what you produce. And so when people value money over that, to me, it's like they don't even value themselves because they don't think they're worth anything unless they have money. Pero your value is not money. Your value is how, you know, what the relationships you have with people, the relationships you have with your neighbors, the relationships you have with your children, if you have children, how you show up, you know, if you're someone that takes care of the environment and shows up for other people. You know, there's people that will leave their trash and not give a shit. That's not someone that has value. You know, that's someone that doesn't even care about their house. Like you said, this is our home. So, if you're just gonna leave trash everywhere, then that's how much you value yourself. That's how much you care for your environment. So it's those comparisons that I think that shift helps me feel like, okay, this is just people that are just misinformed, that don't really know, don't really feel like they're valuable unless they have money. And I don't agree with that fundamentally. So I'm also not gonna try to convince them.
Right.
Unless they're willing to see things and learn things from one another, because that's where I'm coming from. Like, I've always been very open, but those people that are there's people that just want to fight, that just want to debate you, that just want to prove you wrong, because they think they know what's best, but that's not even, like, none of us know.
Right. And it's like, the thing is that we are open, you know, we can take, like, we'll sit there and have a conversation with people and listen to their points of view. And I understand, like, this economy needs to keep running, right? This economy needs to keep going. We need to circulate our money, our currency, whatever, and to keep surviving here. But that isn't our only priority. How is our country going to keep running if we don't take care of our people? Yeah. You need people to keep this country running. How are you going to do that if you are literally putting barriers? I don't understand. I don't see how they don't, like, I don't know. I just like, I guess that's just, like, for example, you're at work, right? If you want your business to flourish, you're going to take care of the people who are working for you. You're not going to treat them like shit.
Right.
Are you? Because then your business isn't going to keep going.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to treat them like shit. You're going to take care of them. You're going to listen to them. You're going to listen to their opinions. And based off of those opinions, you're going to make your decisions. And then take care of your people so that they're happier and they are willing to keep going for you and work for you.
Yeah.
This is literally here in the United States. Like, why not take care of our people first? And do it together. Rather than trying to stop us. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think for me, that's where power comes in. Like, power and greed. And it's like these people, I grew up Catholic, but I don't practice it, nor do I know most of it. But they're the deadly sins, right? Like greed, gluttony. Those are two that stand out to me, that I'm like, it's anything that is in excess. And power is one of those things that is just so, like, captivating. And all of us have play with power. We talked about it a few weeks ago when you have power over your kid in some retrospect. And that how, as a parent, that can also go to your head, and you can be like, you can tell him to do something, and then he'll ask you why, and you'll be like, because I said so. You feel that because you have the power, you don't have to explain anything. You don't have to justify. You know better. That's what's fundamentally instilled in us, in our brain, that, like, we know better than a kid. And in some things, I agree. Yeah, they can't cook. They can't, wipe their own ass. But, they're intelligent in their own ways of, they figure things out. And they figure out puzzles, or they imagine different possibilities. And that's what our spirit wants to do, right? Like, all of us just want to be free and experience life, but we're caught up in a system that upholds power. So, to me, all of this comes back to that conversation of power, of going back to ourselves and like using our own power in a productive way. Not trying to, even that's, I know you've been talking about how it's hard because your family just disagrees.
Right.
I went to one of her releases, Naomi Klein's releases, and one thing that stood out from that conversation, someone asked her, like, what do you do about the people that don't believe in climate change or don't believe this is an issue? She's like, I just let them be. I don't waste my time with them because they're not trying to actually learn and engage with you. They're just trying to debate with you. So rather than focusing your energy, and they take up a lot of energy.
Oh my gosh, do they?
Rather than focusing all your energy on those people, focus on the people that want to change, that want to imagine, that want to believe and use their power for something productive. That's how we're going to build change. And so for me, I'm like, yeah, this is all difficult to understand or even imagine what's going to happen in the next 4 years. But I think it's also a call to action again for me, and hopefully for a lot of people that feel disappointed, frustrated with the outcome, that this is a call to action for ourselves, to take responsibility for ourselves and for each other. Like, show up to a council meeting. If you can't show up, ask a friend, hey, can you go and let me know what's going on? Or all those notes are public information. Go read what's going on. Treat it as something that is like a form of self-care. That's gonna be my shift of that 1 hour or 2 hour meeting that happens every 2 weeks, because usually that's how often city council meetings happen. Maybe once a week, maybe every other week. For 1 hour, they talk about what's happening. That's not a lot of my time.
We spend that on freaking Instagram,
I'm
TikTok,
on my phone.
Facebook.
Don't even want to see how long I'm in there.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time, and it's like, yeah, like I have a responsibility for myself now. Like I have to take that more seriously and make that time, make that effort to show up. And most of those meetings now are online too. So it's not an excuse that you can't make it. Sometimes you do need to be in person because then you can't get heard. But, to stay actively informed, I think I do need to instill that as a practice of like, I just need to treat it as like a 1 hour class that I take that I'm willing to dedicate time for. And that's my responsibility to myself, to my community, to my future, that I know what's actually happening. So that's kind of where my shift is right now, where I'm like, I'm just very like practicing hope, and hope is a feeling. Hope is something that fluctuates.
Yeah.
It's like when you wake up happy, for girls, you understand this, right? You wake up happy and then by the end of the day you're crying. That's a feeling. Those are feelings. Yeah. Hope is a feeling. Hope is something that comes and goes. So we can't rely on hope to feel motivated, to feel like we can change things. You can't rely on that. There has to be different ways for you to practice. What does like your community look like if it's not under this oppressive system? What does it actually look like? Oh, it looks like community meals. Oh, okay. Free community meals. I can imagine that. Let's do that internally. Let's do that here. Let's then expand it. Or access to medical supplies. It's like, okay, yeah, everyone deserves medical supplies. Everyone deserves to have free checkups. Okay, let's put that together. Let's actually provide those resources, figure out how to bring them into fruition instead of wishing that those things would happen and expecting that these people, complete strangers, know that that's what we want. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think it's important to, it all comes back to that community. It all comes back to that, and I know that a lot of us are just kind of bummed, with the results. I really thought that things were gonna happen, but, and I get it, like, I wasn't too fond of my options either, and like I had mentioned to you before, it's like the better of two evils.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people gave up their vote and just didn't vote, which is actually kind of like worked against. It helped one party, but not the other. And there's other options. I know somebody who voted for like the third party, and
I went back and forth with that a lot.
So but I don't know, I feel like a vote helps, a no vote doesn't. So I just hope, like, and I get it, I've been there before. There's been election seasons where I didn't vote because I didn't feel like, one, I didn't feel like I knew enough, two, I didn't like my options either, and I was like, I didn't think that my vote mattered. However, now, like, my perspective has changed, and it does matter. You just have to do a little bit of background, on the people who are on your ballot, and just make that decision, the lesser evils, the two of lesser evils, or the third option. I mean, if we really wanted to, we could all do the third option, and maybe something would happen then. But again, it's each individual's like experience and their thoughts and stuff. I don't know. I woke up that morning just feeling at a loss, and I don't know, like, all of a sudden I felt this darkness come over me, and I feel like this was necessary, just talking about it, because I'm reminded that we're not alone, and we can continue building that community and reaching out, like you said, to those people who do want to grow, who do want to make these changes, because together we can make these changes, and we'll just continue fighting for injustices and for our rights. But
and a reminder to ourselves as well that because I went back and forth with like who to vote for, what to do. A reminder that this is a big game of chess, that we're playing. This is it's a strategy. It's a strategy that we were all trying to figure out. What if we can make a shift in things? And I think we did succeed at that. I think that there is a fire under our ass, right now, of like, okay, we need to stay informed, because if he can uphold or use as much of the power as he wants, then like our lives are truly at risk. So it's now, I feel like it is a call to action of like, again, responsibility for ourselves, to each other, and not rely on one person to be the face of this entire country, right? Like it's not for people that are not in the US. Like, that does not represent us.
And I think they know. I think I'm pretty sure they're well aware of that.
Yes and no. There's definitely a lot of like, people do see us as ignorant.
Oh yeah.
People do see us as like dumb, because at the end of the day, still we are not learning from other countries that are actively fighting, right? Like, we're not actively on the streets like people in France have been. Like now that the Germans have learned from the Nazis, like they are like big advocates against genocide, against racism because that was one of their biggest lessons that they learned. And it's like, we refuse to acknowledge those truths. We refuse to acknowledge that slavery, it was an issue, like it was, like paying reparations for all the damage that we've done. We refuse to accept that we hurt women, especially women of color, through medical, what is it, when they used to do a lot of cruel things to women, essentially. They used to test them for things. Well, children, Native American children too. So like, the U.S. refuses to acknowledge that. And if we don't look deeply at those things, kind of like what she's saying, then we're not acknowledging that we also uphold those same values. That we also uphold white supremacist values in ourselves. That we are also racist in some ways. And if we can't actively acknowledge that, and again, like people say, become anti-racist, not just not acknowledge it, become anti-racist, become anti-imperialist, become anti-colonization, like that's how we're gonna ignite that fire. It's like actively acting against it instead of just being like, yeah, they're gonna do something about it.
Right.
Assuming that they're gonna do something about it.
I don't know. And a lot of people, I feel like, say, well, it doesn't affect me directly. And it's like, no, it does.
It will.
Yeah, exactly. It will. It's like, oh, okay, it's all okay until it doesn't affect you directly, but eventually it's going to, and then that's when it's going to be like, oh shit. It's a very, very heavy topic, and it's a heavy topic. It's a scary thing to talk about and put out there, but it's necessary. And like, we can't be afraid either. Like, we have to, like you said, use our voices and keep moving forward.
Gain clarity.
Yeah, definitely.
Gain clarity on what is our approach.
Yeah.
Again, we were talking about, like, there's a lot of misinformation happening. Unfortunately, our own family members were excited when they won, right? And it's like, when I look at that, I'm like, you're just actively misinformed. And you're either choosing it or you're participating in it. And either way, like, it's just something that we're going to disagree on. Fundamentally, and we're not gonna try to convince you, but know that that's where our boundaries are. So I'm like, same with my family. I'm like, if you voted for them, I'm like, that's boundary. Don't expect, unless you're willing to engage in an actual conversation, don't expect that same reciprocity at that point. Like, just kind of figure it out yourself, because you're actively choosing to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think that we all need to do a better job at finding the right information. Not just believing everything that we see on social media, the videos we watch on YouTube, that you get your information from different sources. Even the books that I'm referencing, like Naomi Klein, she has a lot of background in that, and these are things that are not just her. This is a book written through many people that collaborated. All the information that I'm trying to engage with is not just from one person. It's from different sources. Yeah, different sources, different ideas. I think we have to be open to those sources and not closed off. I've listened to so many people who are Republican and have understood their point of views and been receptive of what they say, and I can see their point of view to a certain degree, but not once have I been like trying to prove them wrong. Like, I've always been curious. So yes, and that's awesome. That's a great quality to have. to just be curious.
And I think that's how we should all come about things, but unfortunately that's not the case the majority of the time.
Yeah. Not
But-
like we have stories
Yeah.
about that. But yeah, we could pause here. There's not much else unless you want to go off a little bit more.
No, I think just in this moment, in these next 4 years, for those of you who are feeling this, just remember you're not alone. Find your people, find your community, reach out, and let's connect. Let's keep moving forward. Let's brainstorm, figure out how us as individuals and together as a community, how we're going to make changes and fight for injustices and work harder for the next election, you know.
Yeah.
And let's not lose who we are. We know our morals, we know our values, we know where we stand. We know the type of people that we are. We are kind-hearted, we love people, we have this light within us that no one is going to be able to shut off. So let's not let them do that to us. It might feel like it's happening, but it's not. We're stronger than we think we are. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's all, y'all. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. 2.
That's why I was like, wait,
what?
Thank you for listening to
To
Root Feelings.
I was like, wait, we're ending it.
Yeah.